Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
And I'm Jessica.
Today, we are here with the final of our series of 7 saintly virtues, all intended to combat the 7 deadly sins. Earlier this week, we talked about the sin of lust, and so today we're going to be talking about its counterpart, the virtue of chastity.
Chastity?
Chastity.
Not modesty?
Not modesty.
But I was all set for my against modesty talk.
Well, we'll get there. But
Okay.
No, we are talking about chastity, not modesty.
I mean, it's a better virtue, but still.
It is.
I was all set.
Well, we'll have time.
Okay.
I'll make time for you to say what you have to say about modesty.
Okay, so what is it in Latin?
So in Latin, the definition that I found for it was castitas. Sort of like chastity, but without the H in there.
It's just more Latin-y sounding.
Yeah. Once again, we're looking for the ancient Latin term for a word in a language that hasn't really been used in a long time in that way. So it's kind of tricky to find the right one. I'm fairly certain I could go and pull up two different Latin dictionaries and find 2 different Latin words.
Yes. Although you would think it would be easier because the only time that Latin is really used for as a language that is, not just copying old stuff is for church things. So you think church words would be easier to find.
You'd think so. But this is another one where the definition shows just how inaccurate the modern understanding of chastity is.
Okay.
The dictionary, from Webster's dictionary, quality or state of being chaste. This goes back to like the one with charity.
Yeah, that's
where it gets circular. How do I? Well, what would I be doing if I were chaste? Well, then you'd be exhibiting chastity. Mm-hmm. Well, what's chastity? Well, you gotta be chaste.
Yeah. All right.
So I went and I looked it up this time. What exactly? Given that they gave us another term that this is defined by, what exactly are they defining it when they say it's the quality or state of being chaste? And the way that they defined chaste would be to abstaining from carnal love. Now,
that doesn't seem like the correct definition because all people are called to be chaste, but unless you're a monk or a nun or like a priest or a consecrated lay,
or a single person,
religious, that's not the right definition.
That's exactly
that
the thing.
That seems to be abstaining.
It's abstaining from carnal love isn't wrong necessarily, and that for most people, for most people who would be considering the practice of chastity, that's what that would be. Mm-hmm. But as you pointed out, chastity is not a thing for the unmarried.
Well, I mean, it is, but just not. Just.
It is. It's definitely a thing for the unmarried, but it's not just a thing for the unmarried.
Yes, it's like squares and rectangles,
Exactly.
All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Exactly. See, we are all called to live a life that is chaste. But some of us have actually been put by God into a life vocation where part of our being chaste does not actually require us to be abstinent.
Yes, I mean that would make the I think second in the Bible commandment of go forth and multiply not usable.
Exactly. While we only tend to think of chastity in terms of people who are single or perhaps living a consecrated life, everybody, all Catholic people, actually all people, whether they are married or single or consecrated, that was the word I was looking for, are called to be chaste and to live a life of the virtue of chastity.
All right, so does a Catholic dictionary have a better definition?
Actually, I got one from New Advent, Catholic Encyclopedia, where it says that chastity is the virtue which excludes or moderates the indulgence of the sexual appetite.
Which works a lot better with what we said lust was, and the fact that Thomas Aquinas insists that any sin is having too much or too little of some, natural thing.
Yes. So whereas a person who is married can be lustful, even for his own partner, he therefore, the married person therefore also needs to practice chastity, both towards relationships outside of their marital union and within. And all people who are otherwise vocationed should also be practicing chastity because, once again, they are not married to another person. But this gets back to where you were originally expecting to go.
Okay.
Well, we don't really hear a whole lot of talk about chastity in the church right about now. Once upon a time, it may have been something that got railed on a lot. But we currently live in a world where everybody's a little more...
Well, there is the issue that it is kind of hard to talk about these things for most Catholics who get their religious education during the homily. I mean, I remember one time when the bishop just randomly showed up due to a conflict of different calendars, where he gave a talk where at a certain point I'm like, should we cover the kids' ears? I think we should cover the kids' ears.
But nonetheless, what you do often hear of is modesty talks.
Yes.
And I'm sure there is some flip side of that coin for men, because from what I've seen, men don't get modesty talks. And the talks that they get in parallel to the women's modesty talk isn't really a chastity talk either necessarily. It's kind of chastity, but it's always kind of like, be a man.
I always assume that, the breakout between male and female at religious things where the women get the dress like you're wearing a potato sack talk is much like during, like junior high sex ed, where the women had a bunch more stuff about, actually what your body does and changes, and so the guys discussed or watched football.
My elementary school, we had to sit through both. It was really awkward.
See, we had the female gym teacher taught the girls, and the male gym teacher, who was also the football coach, taught the guys. So that's probably
why you got that picture.
Other
yeah.
ones might have gotten baseball or basketball, but basically they goofed off and watched sports.
But anyways, the point here is that, number one, chastity is not necessarily modesty. And number two, if everybody was properly practicing chastity, nobody would think that it was necessary for really having great big modesty talk productions.
Well, at least what modern people consider modesty.
Right. Because here's the thing.
Because that's not actually what modesty is, but it's been siphoned down to that.
Right. Because they are another beautiful creation of God, and they are, essentially speaking, our brothers and sisters in Christ, and we should be looking at them that way. And anybody who would look at his sister and think some of the things I've heard some people talk about in the guys breakout session, not a good guys breakout session, but nonetheless, you wouldn't talk that way about your sister.
No, I wouldn't. That would be
super weird for you.
Levels.
I'm just saying, they wouldn't talk that way about their sister.
Yes. So, we have finished our vices and therefore finished our virtues.
That's right. So this is the end of our 7 deadly sins with their counterpart 7 saintly virtues. We will probably do, given, as we've said throughout this, there are lots more virtues to talk about.
I mean, we didn't even get to all the ones that are mentioned directly in the Bible.
Exactly. And at the same time, if I really dig deep, I can find a whole lot of other stuff that St. Gregory talked about with regards to the deadly sins, because as we pointed out, they are sins that lead to other sins. And so he's got whole lists, not only of the sins, but of the daughters of those sins, the things that it most commonly leads to.
Yeah.
So we will probably come back with more of this later on. But for right now, we hope that you enjoyed our treatment of the 7 deadly sins and their 7 counterpart virtues. We'd like it if you go down below, hit the subscribe button and the bell next to it so you get notified when our next episode comes out. This is Friday now. Veaster ends with Sunday. That means that there are 2 more Veaster episodes left in the works. And then we'll be back to our regularly scheduled 2 episodes a week. We might take a week off just to get stuff back in our heads after all of this outpouring for Veaster. But until then, hit the like button and go down below and leave us a comment of your thoughts on our treatment of the 7 deadly sins and the 7 saintly virtues.
Should we have quoted Thomas Aquinas more? Should we have quoted him less? Would you like us to have thrown in the quote of St. Augustine of Hippo for this one that I didn't think of until we were filming to put in?
Is there a sin that you would? Is there a sin a sin or a virtue that we covered that you personally would really like to get a little more in depth on? Maybe if we get some of those, we'll do some of those. And until next time, remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
And share that love.